The war hall of War Prime was carved from the bones of a dead moon. 1,000 banners of 1,000 worlds hung from the vaulted ceiling, each representing a species that had once believed itself eternal. Beneath them stood the commanders and champions of the Galactic Alliance, the last remnant of civilizations united by fear of extinction. At the center of that grand chamber burned a crimson holographic projection of the Zeroth swarm, an endless mass of black, living ships spreading like rot across the spiral arm. Each flicker of the hologram marked another world consumed. The air was thick with tension, not just from the sight of the enemy, but from something older, the collective terror of mortality shared by beings who had forgotten what it was to die. And then came the sound. Heavy, echoing footsteps. The soldiers turned. The great doors of the chamber hissed open, and in strode General Threxvor of the Vor Dominion, his armor gleaming like molten iron, his eyes burning like suns behind the jagged slit of his helm. Every being in the hall straightened at once. The Vor were the oldest warrior species in the known galaxy, their honor codes older than half the empires represented here. Threxvor was their greatest living legend, the general who had never retreated, never surrendered, and never spoken to recruits directly. Until today. He stepped onto the obsidian dais, claws scraping the metal like thunder. "Recruits of the Alliance," he growled, voice deep enough to shake the walls. "The swarm consumes all. It knows no fear. It has no mercy. You will stand before it. Some of you will live. Most will not." A murmur spread through the assembly. Soft clicks, hisses, telepathic whispers of unease. For many here, this was their first battle. For most, it might be their last. Threxvor raised his massive arm, and the hall fell silent. "I will ask you a question," he said, his tone like a blade drawn from a sheath. "And your answer will tell me whether this alliance has a soul worth saving." He paused, his golden eyes sweeping across the gathered species. The crystalline Valari, the amphibious Nethar, the silent Mwantok hive, and dozens more. Then, with the weight of centuries behind him, he asked, "Who here fears death?" The words hit the room like a shock wave. Silence followed, total, suffocating silence. The question was sacred. Death was not something discussed in the open. Most species had rituals, codes, or genetic memories teaching them to avoid even thinking of it aloud. Death was taboo, the great unspoken shadow that followed all sentient life. The Valari shifted uncomfortably, their crystalline bodies dimming. The Nethar let out low, mournful croaks. A few of the psychic races lowered their heads, projecting waves of solemnity across the hall. And then someone laughed. At first it was quiet, just a chuckle, then another, then several. The sound echoed strangely, warm, human, out of place in a room of gods and monsters. The laughter came from the back rows, a small cluster of soldiers wearing mismatched armor, their helmets clipped to their belts. Humans, the newest addition to the Alliance. The species no one had expected to last a single war, yet somehow refused to go extinct. Every alien, I turned toward them in disbelief. The humans weren't mocking. They weren't disrespectful. They were amused. One of them, a lean man with close-cropped hair and a grin that didn't know when to quit, elbowed the soldier beside him and said under his breath, "Guess that's one way to start orientation." The alien beside them, a towering blue-skinned teller officer, hissed in outrage, "You laugh at death?" The human shrugged. "If you don't laugh at it, it wins." Gasps rippled across the room. Several alien dignitaries muttered psychic oaths. Even Threxvor's armor claws twitched in restrained fury. "Step forward," the general commanded. The laughter died. The human soldier straightened, stepped through the rows, and saluted with a small smirk. "Captain Elias Ward, Earth Expeditionary Corps, sir." Threxvor's voice deepened. "Explain yourself, Captain. You find death amusing." Ward's expression softened. His grin faded, not out of fear, but out of memory. "No, General. I just find familiar." The room stilled again. Ward gestured to his squad behind him. "Every one of us has looked death in the eye before we could walk. Some through war, some through famine, some through just being human. On Earth, we don't have centuries of peace or psychic protection. We die a lot, but we keep going. That's what we do." He looked up at the massive alien general towering above him. You asked who fears death. The answer is simple, sir. Everyone does. But some of us learned that fear doesn't have to rule us. One of the alien officers sneered. Primitive bravado. Ward met his gaze. Maybe, but it keeps us alive. The hall was silent again, but a different kind of silence this time. Not fear, but thought. Even Threxvor seemed to hesitate. He studied the human, the mortal with the heartbeat so loud he could almost hear across the hall. And for the first time in decades, the old general found himself unsure of what he was seeing. You laugh because you do not understand death, Threxvor said slowly. No, sir, Ward replied, voice quiet. We laugh because we do. That line struck deeper than any weapon. Threxvor dismissed the recruits with a roar of command, but his gaze lingered on the humans as they filed out. The echoes of their laughter followed, not mocking, not proud, just strangely calm, as though they had already accepted something the rest of the galaxy refused to face. When the hall emptied, the old general stood alone, staring at the hologram of the swarm. He thought about the question he'd asked. He had expected silence, or maybe oaths of courage, but not this, not laughter, not humanity. For a long time, he pondered in silence, his claws tapping against his armored knee. The species that laughs at death, he murmured. Perhaps they are not the weakest among us, but the strongest. And far away, in the barracks below, the humans were already joking about the encounter. One of them mimed Threxvor's booming voice, another mimed fainting in fear, and laughter erupted again, real, unashamed, alive. Because that was how humanity survived. By laughing. Even when the universe demanded tears. By mocking the void itself, and living to tell the tale. And soon, the galaxy would learn. That laughter wasn't madness. It was a promise. The sky above Hesker, 9 was a living storm. Electric clouds pulsed with violet lightning as the planet's twin suns died behind a wall of smoke. On the horizon, the Zeroth swarm descended, a tide of shadow crawling across the sands, blotting out light, thought, and hope. Every soldier stationed on Hesker, 9 had heard the stories. Worlds turned to bone, cities digested whole, minds screaming into silence as the hive devoured everything, matter, memory, even identity. For the Galactic Alliance, this was to be the last line of defense before the swarm reached civilized space. And on the front trench, in mud and ash and blood, stood the humans. They'd been placed there deliberately. The alien command had thought it poetic. Let the reckless species that laughed at death face it first. The humans didn't protest. Captain Elias Ward even smiled when he read the orders. Front line again, huh? One of his soldiers joked. Home sweet home. Ward replied, loading his rifle. Their armor was old, their gear mismatched, their spirits unbreakable. Across the line, alien soldiers watched them with silent disbelief. The crystalline Valari checked their weapons in ritual silence. The reptilian Karnath prayed in low hissing tones. The humans? They were singing. Yes, singing. A rough, old Earth war song carried across the trenches, clashing against the howling wind. The words meant nothing to the aliens, but the rhythm felt like defiance itself. What is that noise? A Karnath lieutenant muttered. A death ritual, perhaps? Another guessed. The truth was stranger. It was how humanity breathed in battle, through laughter, song, and jokes, because silence was surrender and fear fed the enemy. At dawn, the swarm arrived. The horizon split open. Billions of chitinous bodies, like black glass and flame, surged forward. Their screeches shattered comms channels. Their psychic field, a miasma of collective fear, rippled across the battlefield, stabbing into minds like knives. The Valari soldiers froze, their crystalline forms flickering under the psychic pressure. The Karnath broke formation, some collapsing in primal terror. Only the humans moved. One laughed, an actual laugh, not forced, not panicked, but real. They're uglier up close, shouted Private Lennox, firing his plasma rifle into the tide. Aim for the pretty ones, another yelled back. Their laughter, their shouting, it was madness to the others. But as the psychic wave of fear grew stronger, something miraculous happened. The humans' emotions began to disrupt it. The swarm fed on despair. But laughter, human laughter, was noise it couldn't consume. It bent, faltered, confused by this alien defiance. Its rhythm broke. Its focus wavered. And in that moment, humanity charged. Ward's voice crackled over the comms. Forward line, push 30 meters. Don't stop. They bleed black, make it spill. The humans surged out of trenches, their boots pounding against the dirt. Explosions tore the sky, lighting their silhouettes like specters. They didn't march like soldiers. They ran like stories being written. A Valari medic watched in awe as one human, missing half his armor, tackled a swarm drone twice his size, stabbing with a bayonet and yelling, "You picked the wrong planet." Others followed, bayonets, grenades, even fists when ammunition ran dry. They should have died, by every military metric. They should have been annihilated, but they didn't retreat. They laughed. They joked. They refused to die quietly. And somehow, impossibly, the line held. The alien regiments, stunned by the sight, began to recover. Inspired, emboldened, they charged to support the humans, not out of orders, but out of something new, something contagious. Courage. Hours passed. The battlefield was a furnace of blood and lightning. By nightfall, the swarm was retreating. For the first time in recorded history, the humans had lost 2/3 of their unit. Yet the survivors stood tall, faces smeared with soot and victory. Their laughter was quieter now, but still present, a heartbeat echoing through the ruins. General Threxvor arrived on Hesker, 9 the next morning. His ship landed in the smoldering field. The general stepped out in full ceremonial armor, expecting silence and mourning. What he found instead was music. The humans were gathered around a fire built from broken drone shells, roasting alien rations that smelled vaguely toxic. Someone had rigged a radio to play an old Terran blues song. Even the aliens nearby had stopped to listen, uncertain whether to feel disturbed or amazed. Ward noticed the general's approach and stood, saluting casually. "Morning, sir. We held the line." Threxvor's molten eyes surveyed the scene, the wreckage, the laughter, the impossible survival. His voice rumbled low. "You lost 2/3 of your forces." Ward nodded. They gave everything." He smiled faintly, but they didn't scream. Not once. The general was silent for a long time. Then, to everyone's shock, he knelt, claws pressed into the dirt where human blood had dried black. "The Vor do not kneel," one of his officers whispered. "They do now," Threxvor murmured. He looked up at the human captain. "I asked once who fears death. You answer with laughter. I thought it arrogance." He gestured to the battlefield. "Now I see it is your strength." Ward shrugged. "Try not to smile too broadly. Fear never goes away, General. We just make fun of it until it shuts up." The old alien's laugh, deep, metallic, ancient, rolled across the camp like thunder. It was the first time anyone had ever heard Threxvor laugh. That night, he sent a transmission to the Galactic Council. "The humans of Earth have done what no army has achieved. They stood before death, and death flinched. Their humor is not weakness. It is resistance in its purest form. I recommend full integration of the human core into primary command. The galaxy needs soldiers who laugh." The message spread faster than any rumor. Across hundreds of worlds, recruits whispered the story of the small, fragile species that had faced oblivion with a grin. And when the next wave of battles came, alien troops across the stars began adopting a strange new ritual before combat. They told jokes, some silly, some dark, some so absurd it made commanders furious. But it worked. The fear lessened. The swarm's psychic pressure weakened. And through the laughter, the galaxy found courage again, as the soldiers of the Alliance prepared for the next campaign. Captain Ward stood on the ramp of his dropship, looking out at the endless stars. "You really think this laughter thing is catching on?" Lennox asked beside him. "Hope so," Ward said, "because we're going to need it." Above them, Threxvor's voice came through the comms, grim but proud. "Captain Ward, the Council has approved your next mission. You will lead the spearhead at Vor's Halo." A pause. "And Captain, this time I will stand beside you. Ward smiled. Careful, sir. You might start laughing, too. Perhaps, the general rumbled, if we live long enough to try. The channel closed. The humans strapped in, ready to fly into another war, and another lesson the galaxy had yet to learn, because death could take their bodies, but never their spirit. And as the dropship roared into the storm-black sky, Elias Ward whispered under his breath, "Let's go remind the universe why it should be afraid of the ones who laugh." The void burned with war. Across the orbit of war's halo, thousands of ships hung in formation, their engines glowing like a sea of embers. This was the last stand of the Galactic Alliance, the battle that would decide whether civilization lived or was swallowed whole. And at the center of that fleet, aboard the command dreadnought Iron Oath, stood General Threxvor, flanked by holograms of every surviving commander. The old warrior's voice was gravel and thunder. The swarm has split the Halo's outer ring. We will hold the perimeter, but their core mind, the hive monolith, must be destroyed, or this war ends in extinction. Silence followed. Everyone knew what that meant. The hive monolith was no ship. It was a world-sized creature, a living fortress orbiting the dying star at the system's heart. Inside it pulsed the central synapse, the psychic brain linking the entire swarm. If it fell, the war ended. If it survived, the galaxy would burn. Threxvor looked around the chamber, his gaze landing finally on Captain Elias Ward, the human who had once laughed in his face. "Captain," he said, "you and your unit will lead the strike." Ward gave a single nod, unfazed. "Just point us where to go, General." A dozen alien commanders erupted in protest. "They're reckless. They'll ruin the operation. No species that jokes in the face of death should lead." Threxvor slammed his clawed hand onto the table, cracking the alloy. "That is exactly why they should lead. Because the swarm feeds on fear. And these humans, they have none left to give." The argument ended there. Hours later, the humans assembled aboard their dropship, armor scuffed, weapons recharged, faces calm. Ward stood at the ramp as his team prepped for descent. The battle outside was chaos. Energy lances cutting through the void, swarm leviathans crashing into dreadnoughts, the Halo's defense cannons roaring like gods. Private Lennox cracked a grin as the ship rattled. "If this doesn't work, I'm haunting you, Cap." Ward smirked. "You'll have to stand in line." They all laughed, softly, but with that familiar warmth. The kind of laughter that said we've already made peace with the end. The dropship plunged into the storm. The hive monolith loomed before them, an impossible mass of living metal and flesh kilometers wide, its surface crawling with tendrils and bioweapons. Lightning rippled through its shell, illuminating eyes that weren't eyes, mouths that weren't mouths. The human pilot muttered, "This thing's uglier than my ex." The squad laughed. Even in the jaws of hell, they laughed. When they breached the surface, the hull screamed under pressure. Acidic air hissed through vents. The humans stormed out, weapons blazing. They fought through corridors of living tissue, firing into the pulsating walls as alien ichor splattered like rain. Every few meters, a new horror awaited. Tentacled drones, psychic pulses that tried to tear memories apart, illusions that whispered their own deaths. One human soldier froze mid-run, gasping, "It's showing me my daughter." Ward grabbed him by the shoulders, shouting over the psychic static. "She's not here, soldier. The swarm lies. Keep moving." Then, to break the tension, he added with a grin, "Besides, if you die here, she's going to kill you again." The soldier barked a laugh through tears and rejoined the fight. Their calms were filled with static, screams, gunfire, and laughter. Always laughter. It wasn't joy. It was a shield. The swarm tried to break them with visions, of burning earths, of dying friends, of endless nothingness. But the humans met every illusion with humor, sarcasm, or sheer defiance. "Is that the best nightmare you got?" "Come on, I've seen scarier cafeteria food." "Hey, tell your hive queen her breath stinks." The hive didn't understand. Its neural field flickered with confusion, the psychic hum faltering. It could not process joy in the face of annihilation. It could not feed on souls that laughed. And that confusion was humanity's opening. They reached the synapse chamber, a colossal heart of glowing biocrystal, beating like a dying sun. Around it pulsed rivers of psychic energy, feeding the entire swarm network. Ward stared up at it, breathing hard. That's our target. Set the charges. As they worked, the walls around them shifted, the hive awakening to defend its core. Massive bioconstructs clawed their way from the walls, each one taller than a tank. The humans fought like legends. Rifles roared. Grenades lit the dark. One by one, soldiers fell, buying seconds to the others. Every time someone went down, another shouted something ridiculous. He owes me 50 credits. Don't let him die. We're out of grenades? Fine, throw sarcasm. Even as death closed in, they made it beautiful, made it human. Only 3 were left when the last charge was armed. Ward keyed the detonator, but found the signal blocked. The hive was shielding its core. Lennox, bleeding and pale, laughed weakly. Guess we gotta do it manually, huh? Ward looked at him, then at the swirling chamber of psychic energy, and nodded. Yeah, guess we do. He opened the comm link to the fleet. Static crackled. Then Threxvor's voice came through. Captain Ward. Status. Charge is set. Shields blocking detonation. Can you bypass it? Ward chuckled softly. Not from the outside, sir. A pause. The old general understood immediately. Captain, don't. Ward smiled faintly. General, remember what you asked us. Who fears death? He looked back at his squad, one holding a detonator, another giving a tired thumbs up. Turns out we still don't. Static filled the channel. Then one last message came through. Ward's voice, steady, warm, human. Tell the galaxy, laughter works better than prayer. And then the comms went silent. A blinding white light burst from a hive monolith. The shock wave ripped through the swarm's psychic field, shattering its unity. Ships screamed. Creatures convulsed. Entire armadas collapsed as their link to the synapse died. The hive burned like a dying star. The laughter of the humans was the last sound it ever heard. From orbit, Drexvor watched the explosion engulf a hive. His claws dug into the console as his second-in-command whispered, They did it. They actually did it. The old general's eyes burned bright with pride and grief. No, he said softly. They died. But death finally learned to fear. The swarm fell apart within days. The galaxy was saved, but at the cost of the humans who led the charge. Every one of them gone. Yet somehow, their signal continued to echo in the comm systems. Faint bursts of static, punctuated by something strange. A laugh, faint, broken, eternal. After the battle, Drexvor visited the debris field personally. He stood on the hull of his ship, staring at the glittering wreckage orbiting the dying star. You taught us how to fight, he whispered. Not with strength, but with spirit. Not with rage, but with laughter. He turned to his crew. From this day forward, no Vor warrior will enter battle without a human's courage in his heart. And as he spoke, the star itself flared, a final echo of the explosion that ended fear across the galaxy. That day was remembered in every tongue, on every world, in every chronicle of every species. It was not called the day humanity died. It was called the day fear died. The war that began with laughter ended with silence, the kind that follows awe, across the shattered skies of the Vornis expanse. Fleets hung adrift, their hulls cracked and blackened, their commanders whispering a single word like a prayer and a curse. Human. The humans had not won by numbers, nor by superior weapons. They had won by refusing to fear what every other species worshipped as sacred, death itself. When the last battle began, the alien general who once mocked them stood upon his command deck, staring through the void as the human ships emerged from hyperspace. Not in formation, but like a storm. Half their ships were already damaged, some burning from previous fights. Yet they came. No hesitation. No retreat. They're laughing again, one of the Voran officers muttered. They're comms. They're playing music. Indeed, through open frequencies, the humans broadcast a rhythm, drums and chants that sounded like thunder given voice. The song spoke of warriors who died smiling, of homes they might never see again, of courage that outlasted flesh. And the alien general realized it was not madness. It was human defiance made holy. When the fleets clashed, the stars themselves seemed to recoil. Human dropships tore into fortified hulls. Marines fought in zero gravity, their suits covered in burn marks, their breath fogging inside cracked helmets. A Vorn captain cornered a wounded human soldier in the wreckage of an airlock. The alien raised a plasma blade, snarling, "You fear now, soft one?" The human, bleeding from his chest, grinned through his cracked visor. "Fear? Nah, I just wish I had time to reload." And he detonated his last grenade, vaporizing them both. Moments like these spread across the war front like wildfire, small act of unyielding courage that shattered entire fleets. The Vorn began to falter. Their songs of war turned to silence. Because how you fight a species that has already made peace with death? By the time the smoke cleared, the human fleet floated broken but unbowed. A handful of ships remained, enough to claim the field. The alien general, once so proud, transmitted a surrender to the human flagship. The hollow screen flickered, showing the human admiral, weary, scarred, yet smiling faintly. "You asked who fears death," the admiral said. "Now you know who laughs at it." The alien bowed his head. "You are monsters," he whispered. "No," the admiral replied softly. "We're human, and we remember every name that bought us this silence." In the years that followed, the legend of that war spread across the galaxy. On distant worlds, alien children would whisper the tale of the laughing species, who faced the abyss with grins and open arms. Entire civilizations began to study human history, desperate to understand the source of that madness called courage. Some believe it came from Earth's brutal past, a world where even survival demanded defiance. Others said it was something spiritual, woven into their souls by the cosmos itself. But among humans, the story became something else, a reminder, a promise. They built monuments not of stone, but of sound. The recordings of their laughter before battle, raw, fearless, echoing through the stars. Every new generation of humans listened before their first voyage into the unknown, because that laughter, once heard, could never die. Centuries later, when a new threat emerged from beyond known space, creatures of living darkness that devoured entire suns, the first response broadcast that same ancient message. No speech, no warning, just laughter. And somewhere light years away, the echo reached an old, retired alien general. His eyes shimmered as he heard again that impossible, fearless sound. He smiled. "The humans still laugh," he murmured. "Then perhaps the stars are safe." And thus, across every frontier, from the ruined moons of Vornis to the golden colonies of Sol, the legend endured. That once, when all others trembled, the humans had laughed. Their laughter became the anthem of defiance. Their courage became the heart of the galaxy. And their memory echoed among stars.